Kenny Francis with the Agenda for Children, Justin McCorkle with New Orleans Public Schools, Orleans Parish School Board, I believe.
Give me a minute. Oh, sorry. Look, I don't want you to get your paperwork.
Are you Mr. Francis or McCorkle? Okay. Is Justin McCorkle here? Okay.
Yeah. Justin can come up too.
Thanks.
I'll let Justin go first.
Ooh. Did I hit you?
Huh?
Did I hit you?
Oh, no, you're good. Justin, you can go first. I want you to address the no PS equity thing first.
Just please identify yourself before speaking.
Good afternoon, afternoon. Good afternoon, committee members. I am Justin McCorkle here representing NOLA Public Schools.
Please go ahead.
All right. The Orleans Parish School Board believes that all schools should be welcoming, inclusive, and inspiring places for all students. Our district's vision is that all students receive a high-quality education that fosters their individual capabilities while ensuring that they thrive and are prepared for civic, social, and economic success. One of our primary goals is to advance equity for all students and families. HB 564 hinders NOLA Public Schools from carrying out the district's vision and goals. Over the years, NOLA Public Schools has created a more equitable and inclusive district where all students can find success after graduation. As referenced earlier, yes, the Orleans Parish School Board did in fact pass a resolution to address the inequities in our district. In that resolution, our board articulated that OPSB has always strived to do our part to bring equitable solutions to systematic problems, only to have efforts undermined by institutional legislation, policies, and mandates at the highest levels of government and from within our communities, and we must have the resolve to confront that problem at every level as a part of the greater conversation and in partnership with government agencies, the business community, nonprofits, clergy, neighborhood associations, and others with the guidance and input from Undoing Racism and human development organizations. It is our responsibility to now turn headache into change and pain into action. We have the unique opportunity to do better, to see the urgency of this moment, and to acknowledge the realities of our past and chart a better course towards a future that prioritizes equity and inclusion. As a member of the New Orleans delegation, the author of this bill, neither the board president nor the superintendent were consulted about this bill, which is not the type of relationship we wish to foster. We have an open door policy and would welcome the opportunity to discuss this bill. But at this moment, on behalf of NOLA Public Schools, I ask that the committee does not vote favorably for HB 564. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Sorry, it's been a long morning. My name is Kenny Francis. I am the Director of Policy and Advocacy for Agenda for Children. I'm also proudly a Louisiana certified teacher and taught for a number of years in the state. Thank you to Representative Hilferty and Representatives Carter and Freeman, who I've gotten the pleasure to work on behalf of the children of Louisiana, and looking forward to doing that again. We're here to oppose this bill as an organization because this bill is unnecessary. It's a distraction from the core issues that we should be focusing on in our state. Louisiana has one of the nation's lowest rates in fourth grade reading proficiency. Only 45% of our state's fourth graders read on grade level. Only New Mexico and Alaska scored worse last year, as well as some of the lowest rates of eighth grade math proficiency. Our children just endured the most difficult year of education than most of them will ever experience, likely resulting in unprecedented levels of learning loss. Yet here we are arguing about whether or not our schools can teach about equity and racism. And it's here I want to point out, earlier it was mentioned Are there any examples of institutional racism that have happened? I can give 3 right now off the top of my head: redlining, segregation, and slavery. Those are examples that were institutions that were legalized in this country that we should teach about. And I understand, Representative Owen, that you've said that we're not trying to stop people from teaching that. But the point that has been made repeatedly is, how do you teach about these uncomfortable topics without making someone uncomfortable? The provisions in this bill are incredibly vague, and as has been already said, is going to lead to a lot of legislation, a lot of lawsuits that are frivolous. That's going to waste both the time and the money of the state and its people, and specifically of our schools that are already struggling to provide the students with the 21st century education that they deserve. I do want to address a few other things that I've heard as I was sitting here listening to the debate as we've been going on. One, this idea that we do not know what teachers are doing in the classroom. We do know what teachers are teaching in the classroom. Every single school in this state, in the country, I would go so far, does classroom observations. This is how teachers are evaluated. Part of that observation is seeing what the teacher is teaching. And so if someone was teaching something that was discriminatory against any students, that would be found out. Their assistant principal, the instructional leader, the teacher coaches, the mentor teachers, whoever is in charge of the evaluations at that school will be observing every teacher. Every teacher gets an evaluation. So this idea that we don't know what's going on in the classroom and must legislate for it is simply not based on any fact. And that's what we're here trying to talk about today, facts. Another point that I want to make here is that this bill claims to be trying to provide protections against discriminations. And what the chairman asked was for suggestions of how to make the bill better. Currently as written, the bill includes protections against someone feeling discriminated against because of their race, their sex, and what he added recently was national origin. I would second the suggestion that Representative Carter gave and add on to that about whether or not he would add sexual orientation to those protections. And I would add one on too. Would he also add protections against gender identity? Because these are also issues we should be legislating against if what we're concerned about is this discrimination. Let's not leave anyone out. If we're worried about kids being discriminated against because they're identified, let's include all the kids, not just a small subsection. That's our other issues here. So the last thing I want to say here is that what has been said before, that this bill is trying to solve a problem that simply doesn't exist. The only example that has been given of what happens in Louisiana has just been addressed by Mr. McCorkle. The fellows that were here before from the Heritage Foundation are giving examples from other states, and there's not a single person that can be brought forth to say that they have been discriminated on based upon what we're teaching in Louisiana. And my very last point I want to make sure that I make here before I let everyone else speak is, contrary to what this bill would have you believe, all mainstream sources of information about diversity, equity, inclusion explicitly make the case that race is a social construct. I'm going to say that again. A social construct, not based on our DNA. So it's not saying that the critical race theory is not saying that racism is based on just your DNA, that just because you're white, you're inherently racist. It's that it's a social construct that has been placed on our society. And in order to eradicate that, we have to teach it. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, I'm sorry. Representative Edmonds just popped up. If you don't mind, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Since it's been brought up and we're guessing, can you read for us the resolution that we can you read it to us into the record?
I do have it. I can get it to you all. It is pretty lengthy. If you want me to read it, I can.
Lengthy, and give me an idea. We're talking about a page or two, or
2 pages.
2 pages.
Yeah.
So have we received the resolution?
No, I brought it up because it came up in this morning's testimony, so I can get it out to the committee members.
So and when was the resolution made?
This was in June of 2020.
And why, if obviously we're here and there's no need for any of these things, why did you have to make this resolution?
So in the wake of the racial unrest in our society on last summer,
okay,
our board took the proactive stance to address the inequities that exist in our school district and brought forth this equity resolution that then enacted our now ongoing equity audit of our district.
And so in order to summarize, you were willing to take in what is or has been going on in our country, across the country, and maybe some in our own state, maybe not as strong as others. But in this case, you were willing to take in a lot of different things that were going on in a variety of states. A very difficult, awful time, dark time in another dark page in history. You were willing to take that on, but it seems as if we're not as willing to take on something that if we don't have the exact evidence or the chairman's not bringing forth certain people, and I think that is true, that sometimes when you try to bring forth, people get hurt and people are nervous about getting hurt. When we're talking about a very sensitive, the race issue, our gender issues, our sexual orientation issues, they're heavyweight issues. We can pretend they're not. Nobody wants to talk about the elephants in the room, but you did. But they're not easy issues. And I guess I was just wondering why did you guys think that in New Orleans that you were seeing signs of the necessity to speak on that issue?
So I would say it's more to the fact and the board acknowledging the absolute fact that systematic racism and inequities do exist within our society. This equity audit gives us the opportunity to assess what is the state of our district in terms of equity and inclusion, and allows us to provide action plans around things and solutions to that fact.
So did you define systematic racism in your 2-page document?
No, that is not defined specifically in it.
So in order to come to again, because I think, and maybe we'd disagree, maybe even the definitions are broad if we take in one state to another, to one city, to one district. I don't know, do you think we have a base understanding of what that definition is accepted, that systematic racism is?
So what I can tell you is that we actually put out an RFP to garner experts around that particular subject. And as someone who is actually going through that process right now, there is an industry standard for systematic racism that is across the board. Maybe you can, I don't know the particular language of that definition, but there is an industry standard when talking about equity and inclusion.
Yeah, surely we would agree that there's a variety of people that make a definition. Mm-hmm. And I think all of these things, it's just my opinion, none of the rest, some going to the table said they weren't representing anybody, other corporate agency or anybody else. I'm not representing anybody else. I'm just saying that if we had one clear definition that we could even agree on, mm-hmm. I would think we could make some progress. I want to make progress. I'm listening. I want the best for every child in the state of Louisiana, all of them. But I think when we have 20 definitions, and then, because I may feel a definition, you may go, no, that's not the definition at all. Mm-hmm. Do you agree?
I think it's a fair point, Representative Edmonds. I think that, and again, like you said, definitions, because language and diction is flexible, can often differ. But I think to give a simple answer to what I believe systemic racism is laws that are created that disproportionately affect one portion of a population. So a good example of that is slavery. It was a law in which you, as a white person, could have owned someone who looked like me. That couldn't have happened the other way around. And the system of our laws protected you to be able to do that and classified me as property. That is systemic racism. And we can go through example after example for the entire history of this country. Redlining is another example. Segregation is another example. This goes on and on and on. It continues today in the unequal justice that we see within our justice system, which we just need to look at the news to talk about that. And so I hear the point that you're trying to make, and I think about some of the other issues that we're going to be discussing through the session. We know that there's a bill about children who identify as transsexual, which that is a law that is trying to discriminate against one specific group of kids. That is inherently systemic prejudice. And so systemic prejudice is when you legalize what some people see as an opinion about a group of people that backs it up and allows you to discriminate against them. So I get your point about definitions, but we can see plenty of examples about them. If I made a law, if I was sitting on this membership and I made a law that said that because of your age specifically, you can't do X, Y, Z, that would be systemic prejudice against you because it's legalized in the law. It's codified.
Trust me, I understand it. I'm on the limb asking a question at all.
Yeah,
because I'm an old white man.
And I appreciate.
We want to just blow it up.
No,
I'm an old white man Republican. If I ask any question, somebody's going to misquote me and say, "Oh, well, that guy's just a racist." But if you knew me, you probably would say, yeah, I don't think Rick's a racist. If you knew me.
And
So I have to have something I can build on, and I'm asking honest questions today. I'm asking an honest question. I have no agenda. If you knew me, you'd know I don't have any agenda.
And I really
I know you don't,
I really
it's
appreciate
my
the
word
question.
against nobody.
Yeah, and I really appreciate the question. I think that this is exactly the conversation.
I just
that
think
we
if we don't come together, so Representative Garofalo has offered a bill that seems to have some attempt, whether you like it or not, or agree with it or not, politically, whichever way we want to go with it. It seems to me, and I'm really not defending the bill. It seems to be an effort, and we're discussing what some parts of that effort is or is not, and it's uncomfortable because everybody wants to ask questions or they want to think about it, but in asking the questions, we run the risk that some in this room aren't running any risk because they can ask any question they want. And I can't ask any question I want because I will be labeled and I will be discriminated against, even though that's not who I am. So if I don't get to some base understanding, I don't think everything revolves around definitions. But if we don't have some agreement, like if you ask me, you brought up slavery. Well, listen, my grandfather never owned a car. I come out of poor white people. But I don't support slavery. I can't ignore what happened in history. But I can be labeled because I'm white.
I trust me when I say that I understand labels.
So I want to find a way. And if this is not it,
I completely agree.
if this is not it, then I want to find a way that I can do more than give lip service to trying to bring us together, because I am sick and tired of the hate that's going on in our country today, because some of the closest friends and people that I have lived my life with are black and brown and male and female and the whole like. And I sound like I'm on a soapbox. It is because if you knew me, which again, I'm going to keep using the phrase, I grew up in an area where our schools were desegregated. I'm old enough to have lived something that you didn't live through. I lived through it, and it was a mess, and it shouldn't have ever been. It shouldn't have been. But it wasn't really a mess amongst the students. We adapted fairly well. Did it eliminate all racism? It didn't. Should we have desegregated? We should have. Were all teachers fairly treated and equitable, Gary Carter? Excuse me, my honorable friend and Representative Gary Carter? No. People weren't always equitably treated, but there's got to be a determination. There's got to be a grit somewhere in us, black, white, male, female, that we finally come to the point, and I don't know that we're there yet, and I don't know that we can get there, and I'm an idealistic thinker. But when I was a sophomore in high school, I was the only white guy that lockered with the black guys. But you don't know that about me.
And if I
and
may.
this has nothing to do with nothing. I get it.
And
Maybe
I-
I'm
no,
just
no, no,
maybe
no,
I'm
no.
venting today, and I get the opportunity because they hadn't turned the mic off yet. I want to bring some legitimacy, whether this bill is
Absolutely.
it or not.
Absolutely.
And I want to do that with black males and white males and black females and whoever's, so we can come together and figure out how we can work together and love each other and be great Americans together and be great Louisianans together. And if you don't know that, I want you to know it today, and I will do my best to prove it. And I'm sorry that I have I've waited for 2 hours to get on my soapbox.
If I may, just briefly.
Well, go ahead.
Representative Edmonds, first of all, I would love to get to know you, and I would love to work together and
I feel as well.
in the service of the children of Louisiana. And two, trust me when I say I definitely understand what labels are like. Despite my advanced degrees, despite my eloquence, despite the fancy title I have in my current job, when I walk out of this building on my way back home to New Orleans, I have a concern about me getting there safely because of the reality of being a black man in this country and driving the car that I drive and looking the way that I look. I have the fear of walking in my neighborhood and someone thinking that I don't belong there. So trust me, I understand when I say that I understand what labels are like. I grew up in Michael Bloomberg's Stop and Frisk, New York. Trust me, I understand what it looks like to be judged before someone knows you. The other thing I would like to say is that these conversations that we're having is how we move forward. I do not believe that this bill is anywhere near the mark of trying to move forward because of the vagaries that folks have already brought up, because of the wide latitude that it would provide to create issues of actually teaching the material in a classroom. Not to mention the fact that, as I mentioned before, it leaves out people. So like, if we really want to get this bill to a posture that is about stopping discrimination, as I mentioned before, and I'm going to mention again, include sexual orientation and gender identity then. That would signal to me that there's an actual interest in stopping discrimination. And if you're not willing to include those things, then I would ask you to interrogate why. Why are those kids left out from being protected from discrimination if this bill is really about stopping discrimination?
And if and when those discussions advance, I have to be allowed the same privilege at the microphone that you are, that I'm
Absolutely.
able to
Absolutely.
express myself honestly and say, this is either what I believe or this is what I've learned, or I have to be able to include some of my own social mores and values, and that discussions, they're difficult.
Absolutely.
And one final thing, and I promise I'm done. But one final thing I'll say to you, and it's just become us, just me and you, right? You know, and that is that you'd also have to. I hope that you will understand that regardless of the label you may feel on your way back to New Orleans today, I hope that you will understand. I hope that you would believe it, as I said, I don't know when that might occur for you, that there are many of us that are white people that don't hate black people and we don't think in the terms of trying to make you something out that you're not. I don't see you at the table today as an advanced black male. I can't help but see your skin color. God gave me the ability to see color. I can't help it. But I don't see you in some erroneous viewpoint. I just see you as an advanced male that comes with opinion. I may agree with you, I may disagree with you, and that you are an educated, involved person. I don't know anything else I can put in there because I don't know you. But you don't have to worry about, I just want you to know, and I hope we'll say this for others, that there are many of us, just like there may be many blacks or browns or whatever else, that doesn't look at every white male and think that they're evil, or that every white male doesn't look at every black male and think that they're evil. We've got to fix that. And
Absolutely.
I think we
Absolutely.
probably agree on that.
Absolutely. And I don't in any way believe that you are a racist or that you see me as anything other as another human being. Because I think one of the things we get stuck on this conversation is individual anecdotal actions. When we talk about systemic racism, it's not about individual actions. Because at the end of the day, Representative Edmonds, I'm sure you are a great man. I'm looking forward to getting to know you. However, the institutions of our country have been racist and discriminatory and still are in many ways. And that is both anecdotal as well as proven by plenty of data and research. And so that's what we're talking about. We talk about institutionalized, because at the end of the day, racism or any other ism isn't about the individual's power or it isn't about an individual's opinion or individual's actions. It's about the power to act on that. So for example, and I'm going to quote a very famous quote here of, it doesn't matter if a white person wants to lynch a black person. That's their opinion. That's their hatred that they feel. What matters and what racism is really about is if they have the power to lynch a black person. And that's what institutional racism is about in every other ism. It's about the power to act on these prejudices and disadvantage someone else or end their life.
Well,
This is often life and death.
Just know if I misquoted in the paper tomorrow or on a blog, which I probably will be,
I'm sure I will be too.
I hope I had the courage to open up the can that we're afraid to even talk about.
I really appreciate the
Thank you,
conversation.
Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you, gentlemen.